Hello, Master Manifester. Today we're talking about manifestation inspiration, and I'm going to throw out some ideas that maybe will jog your inspiration on really cool things to manifest. So, in the last video, I talked about how I'm always manifesting expansion of my awareness and trying to gain more insight into what this experience is, right? One of the coolest things that I have manifested so far, and man, there's a lot. There's a lot, but this one really was cool because it was so unexpected, is M theory. M theory, and it's basically unified string theory, and I think there's like F theory now, but it's basically an understanding of dimensions, right? And it breaks it all down into, the 11 dimensions, like the 11th dimension is time, right? And it breaks it all down in really cool ways that made me start thinking of how our consciousness is really, it's in every dimension. We can access every dimension. This seems obvious from like our dreams and our imaginings and the way our consciousness can like sort of move around. We can be conscious of our body. We can be conscious of our thoughts. We can be in a totally different like fantasy state where we're completely imagining this visceral reality while we're moving around and still living our lives. Yeah, our consciousness is really cool to me. So when I manifested that information, like I had never heard of this, and I followed quantum theory since I was like 19. It's been decades, right? Never heard of this before. But sometimes you don't hear about the science for like 10 years after, it's released because it's not widely distributed. And that a lot of things are like that. So you have to go digging through the data, which is what I do. So when I learned about this and I started thinking about, dimensional consciousness, I was like, well, you know what? It would be really cool if we are already ascended because our consciousness is in everything, but it seems very concentrated here because our brains make time seem linear here, but time isn't actually linear. In physics, time is like a ball of twine, right? It just folds in and over itself, and there are fixed points in which, everything has already happened, and it's just where your position is in space-time for what you're experiencing, right? So let's say if we have already ascended, right? And ascension is just the expansion of the consciousness to become more aware of the dimensions we're already in, you know, then this just feels more solid and more consistent because of that linear time frame, because our brain makes a story, and because the energy is so dense and concentrated here. But it's still, just fuzzy state solidified that could go back to fuzzy state if interaction stopped, right? Because it's not physical first. It's non-physical for fuzzy state first. Potential, probability, right? I can't say that it's consciousness first for sure, but it's like it could go either way. Like you could lean at it from physical based first or from consciousness based first because it constantly exists in that fuzzy state of can be anything, right? So that was one of the things that I really enjoyed manifesting. Um, Now, when it comes to things in the world, I think about manifesting things a lot. Like I talked about housing first programs for like 6 months. I talked to my friends about it. I talked to my family about it. Like, yeah, it would be really cool if I could start this program for this and this and that. Well, it turns out that in my neighborhood, they got a whole bunch of grant money to do just that. So I didn't actually have to do anything. So did it just happen on its own or did I manifest it? And that's what manifestation is like because it integrates with the story so cohesively that one just flows into another. It's really just, me flowing into it, flowing into me, it's all just one thing. This is how we are connected. We are all systems interacting with one another and with our environment, with the greater systems, right? So what else? What else do I really want to manifest right now? Like, I'm trying to think of the big things right now, but I'm actually going to think of it's so weird that I consider this a little thing, but it's only because I'm so used to it now. But some people might consider this to be a bigger thing. So I'm working on a series of experiments working with angel numbers, synchronicity numbers, repeating numbers, right? And I'm using random.org, and I'm basically aligning myself with these numbers using a mental framework of words and abstract sensations, but the same ones every time. Like I have certain indicators like mental images and words. And then along with that number, and its meaning to me. Like, I'll give you an example. For 444, I always think of that as foundations, as the fixed absolute points, as the grid that I'm working through. Now, different things need different context for foundation, right? So I don't always think of 444 in exactly the same way, but it always has the same experiential context, and words that I associate with it are like foundation, support, um, physical, solid, things like that. Things that are very structurally based, right? And things that are set into systems deliberately, things that are already active. So when I get very deeply in this state, I wait for that number to come up, and I have a very specific number of clicks of that I will allow before that number appears. And I'll post one of my not data ones, because this one actually doesn't meet my protocols. Like, I've made my protocols more strict because I want to make sure that I'm getting past the statistical anomalies and stuff. So to kind of prove these theories, you never really prove a theory. A theory is just always a theory. You only ever disprove it. But to try to give evidence for these theories, I've been recording these sessions and just kind of building both the skill. It's turned into like a meditative practice. And I will post the not data video at the end, just so you can, get an actual visual understanding of what I'm talking about. But it's really interesting for me. And what I'm wanting out of this intention and this manifestation, which is already underway, by the way, because the story is already moving forward, is I want an exercise that I can use and that I can give other people for instant manifestations and alignment, so that they can see immediately how quickly you can manifest things. Because once you have that foundational understanding that you are a master manifester, I don't care who you are, if you're watching this video, you are a master manifester. Okay? You've already manifested the reality you're looking at around you. So gaining the awareness of being a master manifester is the only thing that you need to recognize. So I'm manifesting right now that this practice will work out, but I need to experiment with it to feel good in my current character, that I have all the ducks in a row. So I'll just give you an idea of it. And you know what? Play with your own. Feel free to do your own experiments. I do not hog the data. I don't hog the data. So, I hope that it gives you a little bit of inspiration, and that the rest of these ideas have given you some inspiration outside of the norm. We always want the money, and we want the love, and we want the travel and the experiences, but these are like the deeper experiences, right? The more, I don't know, integrated experiences. You really get to know who you are, not just your character, but who you are, right? Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and sign up for the Method Muse newsletter in the description below. I can't believe I managed to do that. Okay.